All right, guys. This is our Good Country People Post lecture. So if you've not read the story, do not watch this. Stop now, hit stop, hit pause, whatever you need to do, and then read it first. All right? Read it first. Let's go and get started. Wow. What a jerk. Man, he just takes off with it. Just takes her leg and goes. Let's go and get started first off just by talking about the basics. The story, obviously, the main character, Joy, or Holga, if you decide, which we challenge our expectation immediately whenever we learn that. First off, she is in her 30s, early 30s. She has her PhD, her PhD, which makes her a doctor of philosophy, which, guys, is a very interesting doctorate to have, in so much that it is almost all completely abstract thought, which is not a bad thing at all, but very difficult and very, very almost overly intellectual, if you will. But that's not a here nor there. It's not the most practical of doctorates, but it's a very impressive one nonetheless. But what we also know is that her mother, Mrs. Hopewell, what we know about that, she's very, not so much resentful of her daughter's education, but is glad, she says, that there's no more school to go to. She's glad that her education is done, because she thinks that's made her harder to marry off. And what's interesting is that from the get-go, one of the first things we learn about Mrs. Hopewell is that even though her daughter lives with her and is in her 30s, she still views her daughter as being that 10-year-old little girl that got her leg shot off in a hunting accident. Even though they are very much at odds, almost constantly throughout the thing. In fact, Joy Holga doesn't really seem to like her mom at all. Very hostile to each other. And I'm very glad that Mrs. Freeman is there to kind of act as a buffer, even though she doesn't like Mrs. Freeman either. She's glad that Mrs. Freeman takes her mother off her hands. Excuse me. And so that's kind of an interesting idea. Our idea of her is challenged. Our expectation is challenged immediately whenever, first off, we learn that her name is Joy. And she's not happy at all. She's a little overweight. She has one leg. She's overly intellectual. She has a massive superiority complex compared to these good country people, as her mother says. And her mother. She thinks of herself as the smartest person in the room, in every room. And if just think of whenever she's having those first conversations with Manly, and how she says, "Oh, you poor naive little dear, basically, you just don't understand what's going on," which that changes quick. But anyway, what's very interesting is that her name's Joy. And you would think someone with the name of Joy would be very bright and very happy and very jovial, but she's none of those things. She's not. In fact, she changes her name to the ugliest thing she could think of. Really. That's what she says is the ugliest thing she could think of. In fact, there's this time where she yells at her mother, where she even says, "Can't you basically just can't you just know what you're not?" Because what Holga believes is that she knows that she's not beautiful or supremely attractive or very well sought after. She knows what she's not, and she kind of goes with it and embellishes it and rolls with it. And that's kind of interesting, that our expectation of someone who's supposed to be so happy, so interesting, so bubbly, whatever it is that we want to maybe throw at as far as adjectives, that's not what we get. That's not at all a joyful person. And so our expectation in that is challenged. Now, she herself, as I said, because of her pride, her hubris in her intellect, because she has a doctorate, she sees this young man and she's interested. Now, remember, she also has a heart condition. And so after we first meet this guy, he is very, very kind of slick. He's not very subtle, if you will. And he not really barges in there, but he really kind of makes his presence known, and he's selling Bibles door to door, which is very ironic considering what we learn about him later. Now, he talks to Mrs. Hopewell, and he gets the name wrong, obviously, but he says he comes to talk of serious things, and he's in the Christian service, if you will. And so he spins this tale of his life as this young man who's 19 or 20. He could be lying about anything, to be honest with you. Spinning this tale about how he wants to do God's work and good service and blah, 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 blah. And Mrs. Hopewell's just kind of standing it. Manly Pointer, his name. Kind of a crude joke. Think about it for a moment. Not very polite at all. But Mrs. Hopewell falls for it, hook, line, and sinker. In fact, they're there, and whenever she finds out that he's got a heart condition too. Come on, guys. Really? You think he's got a heart condition? No. Well, the first thing she thinks of is her daughter. And that all of a sudden after she hears that, she becomes very interested in this guy. And you can almost see her face change when she gets this idea of hooking her daughter up who has a heart condition and this guy up who has a heart condition, and maybe they can live happily ever after. No, not at all. But she rolls with it and goes with it. And so she does that and does what she can. And so they're having dinner. And so he seems very pious and very on fire for the Lord, as they say. And he's none of those things. There's no genuine belief in God at all, even, from what we find out later on, which is something that we also know that Joy is a bit of an atheist herself, obviously, and that's what we find out as this Bible salesman is too. And so anyway, he's taking advantage of this whole situation, and so immediately he kind of notices Joy's false leg, and he decides and kind of convinces her to have a picnic. Now during this time, Joy, who believes herself to be very, very intelligent and who believes herself to be very better, let's just be honest, better than so many people intellectually, she imagines seducing this guy who she views as being this calm, naive little angel. And she wants to corrupt him. To kind of leave her mark on the world that way almost. And what we know is that that's not, what we will know is that that's not him at all. He's not an angel. He's not innocent at all. He's not pious or holy. In fact, he's a horrible person. He's a despicable human being. Excuse me, guys. So what we are dealing with here is that attraction to her is a point of power. She feels powerful over this person. And so whenever he seems interested in her, she's kind of flattered and very interested. In so much that she obviously meets him for the picnic. And what we know is that very soon after that picnic starts, he's still pretending to be this holy person, this interested person. And then whenever they get to that barn, that's not the person that she walked to that barn with, the person that she walked into the barn with, not the same person. Because all of a sudden we see all these things about him unfold. And she views him like they're kissing, and she thinks that she's, even though she'd never been kissed before, 30 years old and never been kissed. And we have this moment where she says, even though her adrenaline was racing, it was still just an action, and she didn't see much value in it. It was enjoyable, sure, but like it wasn't like a big movie star moment where, you know, the guy kisses the girl and there's fireworks and sunsets and flying unicorns and puppies. You know, that's not what it was. But she did enjoy it. And so he basically starts from the beginning manipulating her psychologically. Would say, you know, things like, I love you, don't you love me? You've got to say you love me. And she's like, well, in a way I do. In an intellectual way, I do. In a superior way, I do, even though I don't really believe in the way you think of love. And the implication there is that he has a naive, small idea of love, of the world. And she's better than that, and she's smarter than that. And so, but here's the thing though, is he gets her to say it. He does. And in so much that he wins. Now, a couple of things. He gets her to take off the leg. Now, this is a very intimate moment for her. In fact, this is her. She's never done this in front of anyone before. This is the moment where she is at her most vulnerable. And I don't mean that just physically, but intellectually and spiritually and emotionally. She is vulnerable. Basically, guys, whenever she takes off that leg, she's opening her heart. Really. I mean, think about it. No one wants to be seen at their most vulnerable moment by someone they do not trust and they do not love. That's a dangerous place for any person to be in. But he gets her to do that. He manipulates her into that. And she does but in the moment where she does that, she imagines him taking that leg off every night for her, which is a very intimate thing. More intimate than we could say, obviously, than the physicality of what we consider contemporary relationships to be in, marriage relationships. For her, it's the taking off of the leg, where her soul, her heart is revealed. And for him, this is just a game. Because she says she imagines him doing that night after night for the rest of their lives, or something along those lines. And so she imagines a future with him. Okay? She imagines this embellished life, that he is hers and she is his, and they are trusting so much that she shows her heart, that her leg, every day, every night for the rest of their lives. And so, but we know that that's not what's going on at all. Now, he starts messing with the leg immediately, on, off, and then he sets it pretty far off to the side, where she can't reach. And that tells us from the get-go, he's thinking about what he's going to be doing. He's considering and preparing for what he's going to be doing. Because after he opens up that sack, that basket or what have you, and pulls out those Bibles, we see that one of them's hollowed up, and there are pornographic playing cards. There's condoms, and that's really what sets her off, is the fact that she's starting to see who he really is. He's not some innocent little guy. He's not some pure young man. He is, someone that has to protect himself from disease, protect himself from unwanted pregnancy. And so she flips like that, and she's like, give me my leg, give me my leg. And we can tell right away almost, he's not going to give it to her. Especially when he says that he, as he's on his way out, leaving her there vulnerable, leaving her there to basically, and don't laugh, to hop along home. Don't laugh. Don't laugh. It's not funny. It's not funny. It's not funny. To hop along home, and when he realized that he got a woman's glass eye this way one time. Glass eye, false leg. This guy collects these things from these vulnerable women that for a moment trust him with their most intimate, most vulnerable moments. And he takes them. He steals them. What's he going to do with the glass eye? What's he going to do with the wooden leg other than hurt these women with this? And the whole time he starts rubbing in the fact that he got over on her. The fact that that he's never believed in God. That he's always been this way. That he is not a good person. He rubs these things in because he got over on her. Someone who prided herself on her intellect, on her degree, on her philosophy, on her higher knowledge. She prided herself on those things, and he completely dismisses them. Our expectation of this woman is that of one of dark, of melancholy, of intellect, and of knowledge. And he throws that out the door. What we expect of him is naivety, of trust, of purity, because of his age, because of his job, because he's a Christian man, as he says. I like how she even puts in the O, how they pronounce it, Christian. And that is thrown out directly. This guy's a user. He is an abuser. He's a horrible person. And she mentions all of that. And our expectations of these people, every single one, even Mrs. Hopewell, our expectation that she seems kind of knowledgeable, but she is taken back and is used by Miss Freeman and is used by Manly Pointer for their own ends in different ways. And so both of these women, mother and daughter, are similar in the regard that they view themselves as superior to these people, but they get worked over by them without them even knowing it first. And so Manly gets the leg, and at the end is quite brilliant. Whenever Miss Sobos kind of sees him, it's like, well, I could never be that simple. Once again, that idea of mental superiority, of social superiority. We know that guy is not simple. He is a user. He is a con man of the finest degree, and very charming, very sly, very slippery. He's a snake in the grass, if there ever was one. And so he got over on these people. Once again, our expectations of these characters themselves have been called into question. What we expected, a fine country gentleman, good country people, and he's not at all good country people. He is bad country people. He is like dueling banjos bad. He is not a good person. And so we're going to stop there because I'm going to let, hopefully, Ms. Blunt will have some other revelations for you and ideas for you to talk and for you to listen. So take them in mind, or have them in mind, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the story. As soon as you finish this, as soon as you finish the next lecture by Ms. Blunt, our guest lecturer, go ahead and do your blog first, and then do your quiz. Now, this quiz is a little bit different. I want answers in complete sentences, okay? We're going to start using our writing skills, okay? Answers in complete sentences. All right, guys. Signing off now. Thank you so much. Enjoy, and I'll see you with our next unit.